The hospital room reeked of antiseptic and betrayal, the sterile white walls closing in as Alexander's heart shattered. His sister, Vanessa, lay in the bed, her face pale, a scarf wrapped around her head, her performance flawless, her lies lethal. At 25, Alexander never imagined he'd be the one to uncover her deception, nor that it would cost him his family. He stood frozen in the doorway of the San Francisco hospital, clutching the medical report that exposed Vanessa's fraud. She wasn't dying. She never had cancer. The GoFundMe page she'd launched, raking in over $200,000 from sympathetic strangers and their parents' life savings, was built on a lie so vile it made Alexander's stomach churn. He'd found the truth by accident, overhearing a nurse question Vanessa's chart during a late-night visit. When he confronted her privately, her tearful pleas turned to venom. "If you tell them, Alex, I'll make sure they hate you forever." Now, as their parents, Ellen and Michael, hovered over Vanessa, stroking her hand and whispering prayers, Alexander felt the weight of his decision. He could stay silent, preserve the fragile peace, and let Vanessa's life fester, or he could speak and risk everything. His fingers trembled around the report. He wasn't just fighting for the truth. He was fighting for his place in a family that had always favored Vanessa's charm over his quiet resolve. "Mom, Dad," Alexander said, his voice cracking. "We need to talk. It's about Vanessa." Ellen's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Not now, Alex. Your sister's fighting for her life." "She's not," he whispered, the words tasting like ash. He held up the report, his heart pounding. "She's been lying. There's no cancer. She's faking it for the money." The room fell silent, save for the beep of the monitor, a cruel metronome to Vanessa's act. Michael's face hardened, and Vanessa let out a theatrical sob, clutching the blanket. "How could you say that, Alex? I'm dying, and you're attacking me." Ellen rushed to Vanessa's side, her voice venomous. "Alexander, how dare you? Get out. You're no son of mine if you can lie about your sister's pain." The words hit like a fist to the chest. Alexander stumbled back, the report slipping from his hand. He'd known this might happen, but the raw rejection burned deeper than he'd imagined. He fled the hospital, the San Francisco fog swallowing him as he wandered the streets, tears blurring the city lights. Hours later, Alexander found himself at a small cafe in the Castro district, nursing a black coffee that had long gone cold. The vibrant neighborhood, alive with rainbow flags and laughter, felt like a cruel contrast to the storm inside him. He'd always found solace here, where he could be himself, a gay man navigating a world that didn't always understand him. But tonight, even the Castro's warmth couldn't touch his pain. That's when Julian walked in. Alexander had seen him before, always at a distance, tall, effortlessly charismatic, with a smile that could light up the darkest room. Julian was a barista here, his gray apron tied loosely over a fitted shirt, his hazel eyes catching the dim light as he approached. "Rough night?" Julian asked, sliding into the booth across from Alexander. His voice was gentle, no judgment, just curiosity. Alexander managed a bitter laugh. "You could say that. Just lost my family over the truth." Julian leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Want to tell me about it? I'm a good listener." Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was Julian's warmth, but Alexander poured out the story. Vanessa's lies, the money, his parents' betrayal. Julian listened, his hand resting close to Alexander's on the table, a quiet anchor in the chaos. When Alexander finished, his voice hoarse, Julian reached out, his fingers brushing Alexander's knuckles. "You did the right thing," Julian said softly. "The truth hurts, but lies destroy." Alexander looked into Julian's eyes, and for the first time that night, he felt seen. Not judged, not dismissed, just seen. It was a fleeting moment, but it sparked something in him, a flicker of hope that maybe he wasn't as alone as he felt. Over the next few weeks, Alexander threw himself into uncovering the full extent of Vanessa's scheme. He couldn't let her win, not after she'd turned his parents against him. He tracked down her GoFundMe records, contacted donors, and even found a hacker friend, Mia, who uncovered Vanessa's secret bank accounts. Each discovery was a knife to the heart. Vanessa had been planning this for years, siphoning money while playing the victim. But the deeper he dug, the more isolated he became. His parents refused his calls, and old friends, swayed by Vanessa's sob story, distanced themselves. The only constant was Julian. They started meeting regularly at the cafe, then at Golden Gate Park, then late-night walks along the Embarcadero. Julian's presence was a lifeline. His laughter, his stories of growing up in Oakland, his quiet strength. Alexander found himself falling, hard and fast, for the man who saw him when no one else did. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the bay, Julian took Alexander's hand. "You're not alone in this, Alex," he said, his voice low and earnest. "I'm here. Whatever happens, I'm here." Alexander's throat tightened. He wanted to believe Julian, to let himself fall into this unexpected love, but fear held him back. What if he lost Julian too? What if the truth cost him everything? The weeks blurred into a relentless cycle of digging for evidence and dodging Vanessa's manipulations. Alexander's small apartment in the Mission District became a war room, walls covered with printouts of bank statements and donor lists. Mia, his hacker friend, worked tirelessly, her laptop glowing late into the night as she traced Vanessa's financial trail. "She's good," Mia admitted, pushing her glasses up her nose. "But I'm better. She's been funneling money into an offshore account in the Caymans." Alexander rubbed his temples, exhaustion etching lines into his face. "How did I not see this? She's my sister." Mia snorted. "People like Vanessa don't care about family. They care about winning." The weight of that truth pressed against Alexander's chest. He'd spent his life trying to earn his parents' approval, always overshadowed by Vanessa's charisma. Now, her betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a calculated destruction of everything he held dear. Yet, amidst the chaos, Julian remained his anchor. Their late-night talks had evolved into something deeper, a quiet intimacy that both thrilled and terrified Alexander. One rainy evening, Julian invited Alexander to his apartment in Oakland. The space was small but warm, filled with books and vinyl records, a stark contrast to Alexander's stark, evidence-strewn home. They cooked dinner together, spaghetti with homemade marinara, and laughed as sauce splattered on Julian's shirt. For a moment, Alexander forgot the weight of his mission. As they sat on the couch, music playing softly, Julian's hand found Alexander's. "You don't have to fight this alone," he said, his voice a low hum. "I know you're scared, but you're stronger than you think." Alexander's breath caught. He leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tentative and electric. It was his first real moment of peace in months, a promise that maybe, just maybe, he could build something new amidst the ruins of his old life. But peace was fleeting. The next morning, Alexander received a call from a lawyer representing Vanessa. She'd filed a defamation lawsuit against him, claiming he'd fabricated the medical report to ruin her reputation. The news hit like a punch. Vanessa wasn't just lying. She was weaponizing her lies to destroy him legally. Desperate, Alexander turned to a pro bono lawyer, Sarah, who specialized in fraud cases. Sarah's sharp eyes scanned the evidence in a cramped coffee shop near the courthouse. "You've got a strong case," she said, tapping the stack of documents. "But Vanessa's playing the sympathy card hard. The public loves her sob story, and your parents' testimony could sway a judge." "My parents," Alexander muttered, the words bitter. "They think I'm the monster." Sarah's expression softened. "Then we need to make the truth undeniable. Keep digging." Alexander threw himself back into the fight, but the stress was taking its toll. He barely slept, his dreams haunted by Vanessa's tearful performances and his parents' accusing glares. Julian noticed the change, urging him to take a break, but Alexander couldn't stop. The truth was all he had left. One night, as they walked through Chinatown, the neon signs casting a surreal glow, Julian stopped suddenly. "Alex, you're killing yourself over this. You're allowed to live, you know. To be happy." Alexander's eyes stung. "I don't know how to be happy when my family hates me." Julian pulled him close, his arms a shield against the world. "Then let me show you," he whispered. "You're enough, Alex. You've always been enough." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Mia uncovered a series of emails between Vanessa and a shady consultant who'd helped her forge medical records. The evidence was ironclad: dates, signatures, even a mock-up of a fake hospital letterhead. Alexander felt a surge of hope, but also dread. Presenting this to his parents meant forcing them to face their own complicity in Vanessa's lies. He arranged a meeting at their family home in Marin County, a place filled with memories of happier times. Ellen and Michael sat stiffly on the couch, their faces closed off. Vanessa was there too, her expression a perfect mask of fragility. Alexander laid out the evidence, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "This is everything," he said, sliding the folder across the coffee table. "Emails, bank records, proof she's been lying. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing it because I love you." Ellen's hands shook as she opened the folder. Michael's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Vanessa's eyes darted between them, her composure cracking. "He's lying," she cried. "He's always been jealous of me." But the evidence was undeniable. Ellen's face crumpled, tears spilling as she read the emails. Michael stood abruptly, pacing the room. "How could you, Vanessa?" he whispered. Vanessa's mask fell. "You never cared about me," she screamed. "It was always Alex, the perfect son. I had to do this to survive." Alexander's heart ached. He'd wanted the truth to heal, not to destroy. But as his parents turned away from Vanessa, their eyes filled with shame and regret, he realized the cost of her lies was more than money. It was their family. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Vanessa fled the house, her screams echoing in the quiet Marin neighborhood. Ellen collapsed into sobs, clutching the evidence, while Michael stared out the window, his silence louder than any words. Alexander stood in the living room, torn between relief and grief. He'd exposed the truth, but at what cost? He left his parents' house without a word, the weight of their fractured bond heavy on his shoulders. Back in the city, he found Julian waiting at their usual spot in the Castro Cafe. One look at Alexander's face, and Julian pulled him into a hug, no questions asked. "You did it," Julian murmured. "You're free." But Alexander didn't feel free. He felt untethered, like a ship cut loose in a storm. The lawsuit still loomed, and his parents' silence gnawed at him. Had he lost them forever? Sarah, the lawyer, called the next day with good news. The evidence was strong enough to force Vanessa to drop the defamation suit, but she warned Alexander that public opinion was still divided. Vanessa had taken to social media, spinning a narrative of victimhood, claiming Alexander had manipulated the evidence to frame her. Some believed her, and the online vitriol was relentless. Alexander avoided his phone, unable to stomach the hate. Instead, he leaned on Julian, who became his refuge. They spent evenings exploring San Francisco's hidden corners, secret gardens in Nob Hill, quiet beaches in Pacifica. Each moment with Julian was a reminder that love could exist without betrayal, that trust could be real. One night, under the stars at Land's End, Julian took Alexander's face in his hands. "I'm falling for you, Alex," he said, his voice raw. "And I know you're scared, but I'm not going anywhere." Alexander's heart raced. He wanted to say it back, to let himself love Julian fully, but the wounds from his family were still raw. "I want to believe you," he whispered. "I'm trying." Julian smiled, undeterred. "That's enough for now." The legal battle intensified. Sarah filed a countersuit against Vanessa for fraud, using the evidence to demand restitution for the donors. The case drew media attention, and Alexander found himself thrust into the spotlight. Reporters camped outside his apartment, their questions relentless. "Why did you turn on your sister? How could you destroy your family?" The scrutiny was suffocating, but Julian and Mia stood by him. Mia's tech skills kept the evidence secure, while Julian's quiet strength kept Alexander grounded. One evening, as they watched the sunset from Twin Peaks, Julian handed Alexander a small sketchbook. Inside were drawings of their moments together, laughing in the park, kissing by the bay. "You're my home, Alex," Julian said. "No matter what happens." Tears pricked Alexander's eyes. For the first time, he felt the possibility of a future beyond the pain. But the past wasn't done with him. A letter arrived from Ellen, handwritten and trembling. She apologized, her words heavy with guilt. "We were blind, Alex. We failed you. Please come home." Michael had signed it too, a rare show of vulnerability from a man who rarely spoke his heart. Alexander stared at the letter, torn. He wanted to forgive them, to rebuild what was broken, but trust was a fragile thing. Julian urged him to take it slow. "You don't have to decide now," he said. "Just know they're trying." Alexander nodded, but the ache in his chest remained. He wasn't ready to face them, not yet. The trial began in a San Francisco courtroom, a cold, imposing space that felt worlds away from the warmth of Julian's apartment. Alexander sat beside Sarah, his hands clasped tightly as Vanessa took the stand. She was a vision of fragility, pale makeup, a trembling voice, but Alexander saw the calculation in her eyes. She spun a tale of a misunderstood sister, claiming Alexander had always resented her success. Sarah dismantled her lies with surgical precision, presenting the emails, bank records, and forged medical documents. The courtroom gasped as the truth unfolded, and Vanessa's composure cracked. She shouted at the judge, accusing everyone of conspiring against her. The outburst only sealed her fate. The judge ruled in Alexander's favor, ordering Vanessa to repay the stolen funds and face charges for fraud. The victory was bittersweet. Justice had been served, but the family he'd fought for felt further away than ever. After the trial, Alexander met his parents at a neutral spot, a quiet park in Sausalito. Ellen's eyes were red from crying, and Michael's shoulders slumped with defeat. "We were wrong," Ellen said, her voice breaking. "We should have believed you." Alexander wanted to forgive them, but the words stuck in his throat. "I needed you," he said finally. "And you chose her." Michael reached for his hand, but Alexander stepped back. "We want to make this right," Michael said. "Please, give us a chance." Alexander promised to think about it, but as he walked away, he felt the weight of their betrayal linger. He drove straight to Julian's apartment, collapsing into his arms. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. Julian held him close. "You don't have to fix it alone." Over the next few months, Alexander began to rebuild. He started therapy, working through the pain of his family's rejection. Julian was there every step, his love a steady light in the darkness. They moved in together, a small apartment in the Castro filled with laughter and hope. Alexander also began volunteering at a local LGBTQ+ center, helping others navigate their own struggles. The work gave him purpose, a reminder that his pain could fuel something good. He and Julian hosted fundraisers, using the platform from the trial to raise awareness about fraud and the importance of truth. One evening, as they stood on their balcony overlooking the city, Julian wrapped his arms around Alexander. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You turned your pain into something beautiful." Alexander smiled, his heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." Life settled into a new rhythm, but the shadow of Vanessa lingered. She'd disappeared after the trial, leaving behind a trail of angry donors and unanswered questions. Alexander heard rumors she'd moved to Los Angeles, starting fresh with a new identity. Part of him hoped she'd find redemption. Another part knew she'd likely never change. His relationship with his parents remained strained. They called regularly, leaving voicemails filled with apologies, but Alexander wasn't ready to let them back in. Therapy helped him understand his anger, but forgiveness was a slow process. Julian supported him, never pushing, always present. One day, while volunteering at the LGBTQ+ center, Alexander met a young man named Ethan, who'd been disowned by his family for coming out. Ethan's story mirrored Alexander's, and helping him felt like healing a part of himself. He invited Ethan to dinner with him and Julian, and the three became fast friends, a chosen family born from shared pain. Julian, meanwhile, was thriving. He'd started a small art business, selling his sketches at local markets. Alexander loved watching him work, his hands moving with purpose, creating beauty from nothing. Their love grew stronger, rooted in trust and mutual support. One evening, as they walked along the Embarcadero, Julian stopped and pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with a tiny wave, a nod to their first kiss by the bay. "I don't care what the future holds," Julian said, his voice steady. "I just wanted to be with you." Alexander's eyes filled with tears as he nodded, slipping the ring onto his finger. "Yes," he whispered. "Always." The anniversary of the trial brought unexpected news. A reporter contacted Alexander, wanting to do a follow-up story. They'd tracked down Vanessa, who was now facing new charges for a similar scam in Los Angeles. The news stirred mixed emotions: anger, sadness, but also a strange relief. Vanessa's choices were her own, and Alexander was no longer defined by them. He decided to meet his parents again, this time on his terms. They sat in a quiet cafe, the air thick with unspoken words. Ellen reached for his hand, and this time, he didn't pull away. "We're so sorry, Alex," she said. "We want to be better." Michael nodded, his voice gruff. "We love you. We always have." Alexander took a deep breath. I love you too, he said, but it's going to take time. They agreed to start small, weekly calls, maybe a visit. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. A year later, Alexander stood on a cliff in Big Sur, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly before him. Julian stood beside him, their hands entwined, the sunset painting the sky in vibrant hues. They'd come here to celebrate, not just their love, but the life they'd built from the ashes of betrayal. Alexander had found peace, not in erasing the past, but in embracing the present. His work at the LGBTQ+ Center had grown, and he'd become a mentor to countless young people like Ethan, helping them find their strength. His relationship with his parents was healing, slowly but surely, through honest conversations and shared effort. Vanessa's shadow no longer loomed. She'd been convicted in Los Angeles, her story a cautionary tale about the cost of lies. Alexander had written her a letter, not out of anger, but out of closure. I hope you find peace, he'd written, but I found mine. As the waves crashed below, Julian pulled Alexander close, their foreheads touching. We made it, Julian whispered. Alexander smiled, his heart full. We did. The truth had cost him his family, but it had also given him something greater, a love that was real, a purpose that was his own, and a future built on trust. He'd been disowned for telling the truth, but in doing so, he'd found himself. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alexander knew he was exactly where he was meant to be, beside Julian, surrounded by love and free. This story delivers a powerful narrative of truth, betrayal, love, and redemption, centered around Alexander's journey as a gay man in a complex family dynamic. Each part builds on the last, maintaining emotional depth, dramatic tension, and a meaningful resolution, all while adhering to the requested guidelines.